In this video, I am going to discuss and explain how your Georgia property tax freeze can be taken away from you. Anyone who has watched my YouTube videos about Georgia tax appeals or visited my website, georgiataxappealinfo.com, knows I talk a lot about the benefits of filing property tax appeals in Georgia. One of those benefits is the 299C property tax freeze provision in Georgia. I even wrote a book where the title headlines why you should file a property tax appeal in Georgia. Although the 299C property tax freeze provision is a great benefit to filing a property tax appeal in Georgia, you need to understand that it is not impervious nor an irreversible benefit. It's a conditional benefit. This benefit can be taken away from you if you don't guard it and know the rules. Before I continue, I want to make a quick disclaimer.
A disclaimer. I am not a lawyer, appraiser, or representative for any tax assessor's office. This video should not be considered official legal, financial, or professional advice. If you need official legal, financial, or professional advice, you should hire a professional to discuss your situation. I am only providing general information based on my personal research, experiences, and opinions. Contact your local tax assessor's office for official, county-specific information.
My background so far is I've filed or assisted in well over 200 property tax appeals across 6 Georgia counties over the last 14 years. Most tax assessor offices won't go out of their way to share the information I will present here. So I suggest you watch to the end of this video. It could save you hundreds or thousands of dollars and save you a lot of headaches. The core of how Georgia's property tax freeze provision works lies within the verbiage of Georgia Statute 48-5-299C. I'm not going to rehash all the steps you need to go through in a Georgia property tax appeal. That's beyond the scope of this video. However, I will include links in the description below to my other videos and book which go into much more detail of the entire Georgia tax appeal process. Here I'm going to jump straight to the end of the tax appeal process and assume you already negotiated, settled, or attended a BOE hearing to get your 299C property tax freeze for your property. Because of the 299C tax freeze provision, you will have a new assessed value that will be applicable to the tax year you appeal plus 2 additional tax years. In theory, you should be able to sit back and relax for at least a couple more years, right? I would like to say yes for everyone, but unfortunately, I've learned the hard way that the real world answer is no. You can't relax and assume all will be well, even when your tax appeal is completed. Let me explain why. First, you can lose your 299C tax freeze simply by clerical errors made by the tax assessor's office. I've seen this happen 5 times now with a single client in the last 2 tax years. I'm incredulous it has happened so many times to him. If it can happen to him, it can happen to you. This is why I'm often distrustful, because I see and hear crazy things that go unreported to the public. The first incident happened 2 years ago when we saw an incorrect annual assessment notice where the 299C tax freeze was removed early. It was a what moment. However, the good news was that a week later, a corrected assessment notice was sent out without us having to do anything. Apparently, the tax assessor's office caught the error themselves in this particular instance and corrected it. This was the first time that I realized that a 299C tax freeze could be lost through simple clerical errors through no fault of a property owner. Now, the second to the 5th times all happened last year in 2023. My client received 4 annual assessment notices where the 299C tax freeze was prematurely terminated. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 annual assessment notices to the same property owner. It was crazy. To me, it was outrageous. It's hard to believe unless I saw it for myself. After a couple weeks, we hoped we would receive corrected assessment notices like we did the first time. But unfortunately, it never happened. Since this was something I never encountered before, we contacted the tax assessor's office to bring these errors to their attention and ask for instructions. When we finally contacted the tax assessor's office, a manager told us to file appeals on the 4 properties to correct it. I really didn't like this answer, but we complied. Clerical errors by a careless staff member forced my client into another long tax appeal process for 4 properties. The appeal process took so long to resolve, it actually spilled over into this year and this year's assessment notice, which also has to be untangled and corrected. The learning lesson here is you need to be vigilant each and every year. You have to read your assessment notice every year. You might think you have your 299C tax-free secured and locked in. I am am here to tell you, you can lose it through no fault of your own. You could end up going through the tax appeal process again like we did in order to correct it, and it's no fun. Another way you can lose your 299C property tax freeze is if you make any deed changes. Some property owners make deed changes for asset protection or estate planning purposes. For example, a property owner might deed a rental property into an LLC or corporation so that they can do business in that name. They might deed the property into an LLC or corporation to have a privacy and legal shield against potential lawsuits. A property owner might also deed the property to a trust or trustee for estate planning purposes. They may want their beneficiaries to inherit their property without having to go through the complicated and expensive probate process. Or a property owner may simply want to add owners to the property. There are many reasons why you might want to make a deed change. Whatever the reason, if you make a change to the deed of the property, your 299C will probably terminate. If you feel like you might need to make a change to the deed, I generally recommend waiting until the third year in which the 299C tax freeze expires. For example, I'm making this video in 2024. If you file a property tax appeal this year, go through the entire tax appeal process and get your 299C tax freeze for 2024. That value should be set for 2024, 2025, and 2026 tax years. Since the 299C tax freeze ends in 2026 anyway, it's okay to make deed changes in 2026, the third year. But if you make a deed change in 2025, the second year, you could lose your 299C tax freeze going into 2026. So my suggestion is to not make any deed changes until 2026 at the earliest. If you simply cannot wait until that third tax year to make a deed change, I would contact your tax assessor's office and find out how they handle 299C tax freezes as it relates to your specific deed change. Another situation that I'm dealing with is my cat Jaggy. He wants you to swipe that like button to help spread this video to other Georgia property owners. And if you hit that subscribe button, he will get a special treat. The other ways you can lose the 299C tax freeze is described in two subsections within Georgia Statute 48-5-299C. In subparagraph 3, if you file an appeal prior to the expiration of an existing 299C tax freeze, you risk having your assessment value increase based on prevailing evidence. Filing another appeal before a 299C tax freeze expires is something I generally don't recommend. The one possible exception is if one day there was a housing crash that was so steep and severe, like the Great Recession of 2008 through 2010, when property values declined dramatically. However, as I make this video, this seems quite unlikely for the foreseeable future. Subparagraph 4 is where I've seen a case where a 299C tax freeze was removed early. I think it can happen to some property owners, and they will be blindsided by it. For example, if you have vacant land and you install an improvement, even something like a storage building, it could trigger the termination of a 299C tax freeze. Another situation where you could lose your 299C tax freeze is adding significant improvements to your current improvements. For example, let's say you have a house and you want to add a bedroom, bathroom, or maybe you want to remodel or rehab that house. There's a good chance you might lose your 299C tax freeze. These kinds of improvements are significant and dramatically increase the value of a property. However, if you improve your property by replacing appliances, a water heater, repaint a house, redo your floor, put down new carpet, or replace an HVAC system, it's unlikely you will trigger the termination of a 299C tax freeze. These are generally considered minor improvements not significant enough for most tax assessors' offices to bother with. Whether you keep or you lose your 299C tax freeze will be dependent on a lot of factors. I can't cover them all here, but I've given you some examples for you to consider. Remember, Georgia has 159 counties and they all operate differently. Some counties may be more aggressive than other counties. Some counties have more resources and manpower than other counties. I suspect respect, nowadays aerial photos are being taken nowadays to survey, monitor, and seek out significant improvements. Generally speaking, I believe if you live in a large busy county where there are thousands of appeals each year and their workload volume is very high, there's a fair chance you won't lose your 299C property tax freeze. However, if you live in a rural county where the workload is smaller and there isn't as much activity, significant improvements will more likely be discovered or noticed. Now, this is certainly conjecture on my part, but it's worth considering. The point being is that if you make significant improvements to your property, don't be surprised if your 299C tax freeze is terminated early. Finally, I want to emphasize that decisions to improve your property should not be solely based on whether your assessment value will be increased or not. But there is no doubt that the financial impact of property taxes is a factor to consider before making any major property decisions.